Everyone, I'm Jennifer Marshall, Executive Director of This Is My Brave, and welcome to episode 11, season 1 of BraveTV. We'd first like to thank the Alkermes Inspiration Grant COVID-19 Relief Fund for sponsoring this season as we continue to explore how COVID-19 and current affairs are impacting our mental health. Our September episodes of BraveTV are dedicated to it being Suicide Prevention Month. Though suicide prevention doesn't just start and end in September, we want to take the time to tackle the difficult topic and offer support where we can. Today, This Is My Brave program manager, Katie Grana, and I are focusing on first responder suicide prevention and mental health awareness. We are grateful to be joined by experts on the topic. James Boomhower, one of our Boston 2018 alums, he's a critical care transport specialist, paramedic with Boston MedFlight. And he's also the founder of Fit for Duty, a nonprofit focused on first responder mental health. Dan Mills is also joining us, founder and president of 911 Buddy Check Project. Dan has also been a flight medic, firefighter, and combat medic, and also military police for 18 years. So let's jump right in so we can learn more about our guests and their missions to provide mental health resources and support to those that protect us every day, first responders.
Hi, everyone. I am Katie Grana, and I am a program manager with This Is My Brave. I am calling in from St. Louis, Missouri. I live with post-traumatic stress disorder, and I've also lost a friend to suicide, so today's episode is really special to me. So let's go ahead and welcome our guests, James and Dan. James, do you want to start with introductions?
Oh, sure. I'm James Boomhower. I was a BraveTV alum in Boston. I'm coming to you from just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and I am the founder of Stay Fit for Duty, which is a mental health advocacy, men's mental health, and first responder mental health and suicide awareness advocacy campaign.
Awesome. Thanks. Dan?
Hey, I'm Daniel Mills, president and founder of the 911 Buddy Check Project. We are a 501c3 nonprofit that works with first responders and veterans with crisis intervention, mental health awareness, and also on the health and wellness side of the house with the mental health.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for your intros and for the work you're doing in mental health. It's so important for our first responders. I want to start by kind of going over some stats that we found pretty eye-opening, that a study by the Ruderman Family Foundation in 2017 found that more firefighters and police officers died by suicide than in the line of duty. The same study found that post-traumatic stress disorder and depression can be almost 5 times as high among firefighters and police officers than the general public. I mean, these are alarming rates, but stats and numbers can sometimes be a little bit confusing. Can you guys help kind of break that down for us and how it relates to the first responder world? And also, what is it like for you guys on a daily basis, to be dealing with these kinds of traumatic events and, the effect it has on your mental health?
James, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Go for it, man. It's all you.
No. Being in a first responder, it's kind of like riding a roller coaster that's on fire a lot of days. With the statistics, on the front end, the bad thing is that's with roughly 40% reporting. A lot of times causes of death are noted as something else. And Jeff Dill with Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance says roughly, and that's on the high end is 40%. But, every day we go to work and we see people on their worst day. And oftentimes we're not allowed to have a bad day. We're not allowed to have an off day. And it intermingles with our personal lives, our spiritual lives, our, work, home life just becomes one kind of distorted, identity of sorts. And, it's hard to turn it off. I've been in this for going on 19 years, and there's a lot of days when you get off and you bring work home with you, and seeing just the death and destruction, however you want to label it, just a day in and day out affects you mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally.
Yeah, I laughed when Dan said that, because anyone in civil service can tell you that if you ever try to paramedic a problem at home, your partner just gets really mad at you. Like, doesn't matter if your partner's in healthcare or not, but you try to handle a problem at home like you handle a problem at work, and you've either blown it way out of proportion or you've just started yelling at your partner, and neither of which are good options. Jen, you talked about kind of demystifying the statistics. Dan is 100% right and has done a lot of work on this area even long before I came in the game. Even with the underreported and kind of dimly recognized losses, to put those numbers into perspective, that's of one first responder committing suicide every 4 days. And that doesn't include those that have attempted suicide or those that have profound suicidal ideations, which anyone in the mental health and peer support kind of sphere can tell you is the same risk, right? I'm just as worried about the individual that thinks about committing suicide every day as I am about the individual that's committed suicide, or pardon me, attempted suicide previously. So one every 4 days, and as firefighters, paramedics, police officers can tell you, for some of us, that's a shift rotation, right? 24 on and then a couple of days off and then 24 back on. So it's tremendous.
Yeah, those numbers, and we did mention that the study that we just referenced was from 2017. It seems that these studies don't come out that often. So obviously there's probably newer statistics coming up now. But what I also realized in research is that oftentimes EMS workers are often wrapped into the firefighter categories, and but they do deserve their own recognition. I did find a note, according to SAMHSA, that 69% of EMS professionals don't have enough time to recover between traumatic events. So as a result, depression, stress, and PTSD, suicidal ideation, and other mental and behavioral conditions become more common. So would you say that this is also similar for healthcare workers, as in the hospital front lines? And does the lack of EMS specific data increase the stigma and help-seeking behaviors?
Oh, 1,000%. Like, I always tell people, and we forget to be human. And Boomer knows this, like, being on the ambulance, you literally could drop a pediatric cardiac arrest off, or you just, coded a small child, or, just some horrific event, and already have another call holding before you literally have the back of your truck or helicopter, fire engine, police cruiser. Nurses can, in a 12-hour shift, see and this goes for everybody, police, fire, EMS, literally can see a lifetime of trauma in 12 hours and then turn around and go do it again. And the same with EMS and fire and police. We all work 2 and 3 jobs. So you're literally compounding, like one shift is a lifetime of trauma for, 10, 15 people. And you literally do it day in and day out, and with extended shift lengths. And I don't think we really realize the impact of doing this job day in and day out that it has.
Yeah, everything Dan said. Our job as pre-hospital medical professionals, and Dan and I will speak, on the pre-hospital side of the coin, and the nursing and the physician side of the coin has their own nuances, just in a different space. I don't ever mean to say that the superiors and the communication specialists and anyone don't care, but we all have a role to play in this game. And my role right now is on the aeromedical transport side of the coin. And the people whose job it is to make sure I get from one place to another are getting bombarded with phone calls saying, well, this person needs help and there's a dying baby over here and we need to make sure that we get this person off of there. So we land, we do whatever we have to do, and your phone buzzes, right? And it's, hey, we got to go do this, we got to go do that. And I think especially as you gain some seniority and you gain some kind of overarching sense of everyone's role, you know that it's really easy to say, you know, every first responder's been like, oh, well, the dispatcher hates me and, you know, they're just picking on me. But you know that that person is dealing with a pile of stuff and the person above them is dealing with a pile of stuff. And you almost feel this obligation to do more than you'd like to, or do more than you're ready to do, because you're just trying to like bucket that water out of the boat just to get what needs to get done.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unbelievable what you guys go through on a day-to-day basis in your careers. And, you know, the 2020 has been tough on all of us with the pandemic, but I know I've always felt in my heart like this huge outpouring for first responders and what they're dealing with. And though the data may take years to come in from the impact of the pandemic right now, good or bad, but what do you see as the response right now to first responder mental health that the pandemic has had?
I think across the board, we're about to see a tsunami of mental health issues, not only from the mental and emotional side of we're 9 months into this pandemic, and it's there's multiple variables if you think about it. So not only are, you know, first responders, EMTs, police officers, just humans, just like it's hard to classify like everybody or people in a different category, but we're 9 months into this. They're going to work every day facing something that could potentially kill them, kill their family members. People, and James knows a lot of them that have been directly affected by this. On the flip side, you have the quarantine and the isolation. You have the, you know, people not seeing their family members, the financial from people being laid off and having to pick up extra shifts. And it's this bad concoction that it's been brewing. And, you know, it's September now. You have people who've not been out, not been exercising, not, you know, connecting with friends. And this is something that is unprecedented, because not only is it hitting us on the mental and emotional side, it's having physical effects on people, as well as not being able to have those spiritual connections with going to church or a mosque. You know, you've literally disconnected everybody from everything. And we're starting to see the effects. You know, I mean, it's affected my wife and I. My wife's an ICU nurse. I'm a critical care paramedic. It's affected James, and he can tell you, even just us personally, you know, you wake up every day just on a bad roller coaster ride. And I really do. I posted on social media the other day that I really feel like we're going to see triple the numbers in suicide this year, because it's just not being reported, you know, and suicide and all the agencies that I've talked to are seeing exponential increases in suicide, and you're not really hearing a lot about it.
I totally agree with everything that Dan has to say. I'm just going to be a sliver optimistic and hope that later on in the show, when we talk about the resources, I hope that the big respective to mental health awareness in the world, that's like the caveat I'm saying. When I say a lot of recognition, I mean microscopic levels, but that's still 100% more than there's ever been. When we have more and more people recognizing that, hey, maybe these healthcare heroes, right, and all these, you know, essential workers that we touted during the quarantine might actually need some help. I'm getting more and more optimistic that we're going to start to normalize that help seeking. We've talked about some free resources, and we're going to kind of list all of those out later, but fewer and fewer people are charging for it. More and more people are compensating or covering for those costs. And because we're talking about it, I agree with Dan, there's going to be a tsunami for sure. I'm woefully optimistic that perhaps there'll be an equal-sized tsunami of help. Dan, Dennis, myself, the kind of group that goes out and does all this, knows where it all is, right? And we've listed it all, but I'm really hopeful that the simple fact that a group like This Is My Brave is like, hey, let's talk about suicide awareness in first responders, which is something that not a lot of places talk about, will just help reinforce, hey, we know this is real, we know this is out there. So for people who aren't like Dan and I and who don't live in this space every single day, know that there's help and know that we can work to get our brothers and sisters out of it.
I agree. I think that the one silver lining, the one good thing that's coming out of the pandemic is this huge rise in awareness of mental health and the importance of taking care of our mental well-being and emotional health. And so, Katie, do you have another question you want to put out to the guys?
Yeah, and actually this just kind of came to my mind. What have you guys noticed when you're doing peer-to-peer support that there are stigmas or barriers within your community of people? Because I mean, obviously you can't see everyone on the screen, but they're shaking their heads and laughing at me. But I mean, in terms of also like being afraid of job loss or something, like, is there that stigma that you also work with?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about it in my lectures. You know, I've been a flight paramedic for 7 years, in critical care for 10, fire EMS, in law enforcement in the military, and every single person that we talk to, we take this superhero identity on that. I mean, we literally, and we do, you know, I say we collectively run into the line of fire every day. And when we put on our flight suits and these badges and these identities, we literally forget that we're human. We forget that, you know, and I talk about it in my lecture, like when we were sitting on the commode at home, you know, naked, that's our most vulnerable point. But that's really who we are at our essence, our core. We're all human, regardless of the job we do. And James and I beat our head against the walls because people are so afraid to say, I'm not okay. You know, and I think he and I and Dennis Cole, I feel like we all do a very good job of putting our junk out there for others to see. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been, you know, fighting addiction for 15 years because of this job. You know, and I think we so often just forget to be human because we're not cops, we're not firemen, we're not flight crew members, we're not nurses. That is a job we do. And at the end of the day, sitting in your car after you've clocked out from work, you're human. And we're very fragile. We forget how fragile just the human body is. But, you know, James and I, there's a text thread with a couple of mental health people and myself, and it's just every day, you know, trying to break through to people that even if you do lose your job, that's okay. It's just a job.
And if they're not going to support you in taking care of your mental health, you need to be with a different job.
Absolutely.
I totally agree with you, Dan.
Dan and I, as we all mentioned, are in different parts of the country, right? And Dan and I have referred people from our neck of the woods to one another. Like, you won't talk to me because you think I know your supervisor and you're worried maybe I'll tell your supervisor or your boss will find out that you've talked to me, but would you talk to this guy in Georgia? And they're like, well, yeah. And Dan's on the same thing. Hey, some dude's going to call you, you know, he's from Georgia and he wants to talk to somebody in Boston because he thinks that's enough degrees of separation to keep like leadership and stuff out of it. And I think twice in the history of the world, somebody's been reprimanded for seeing a mental health professional, which is not legal in just about every single state, right? So first of all, it's not okay. And those two stories have so permeated the culture. Every human I talk to from 19 to 55 knows that story. Yeah, but my friend, like, he went and saw a therapist and then he got let go. And you're like, no, he didn't. That's not real. And it was 30 years ago. And it just won't leave because, as Dan said, we identify. Nobody else in the world says, hey, I'm James and I'm a banker or I'm a tax accountant, right? I'm like, hey, I'm James and I'm a paramedic and I'm a paramedic in a medical helicopter and I look awesome in a blue onesie and it's the coolest job I've ever had in my entire life, right? Like, we as civil servants, you guys will introduce us as that, right? Katie's not like, meet my friend James, who's really handsome and can sharpen knives. She's like, meet my friend James is a paramedic in a medical helicopter. And Dan was a tactical paramedic and worked in the military. Like, we just exude this, our profession is our life. And with that comes a tremendous amount of stigma of anything that may bear consequence to the profession that you've intertwined as your life. Dan's gonna laugh at this, but there was a ceremony where I work when I got a different symbol on my name tag. We have a whole hierarchy of symbolism, and it reflects your seniority, it reflects all this stuff, and it was a thing when I got a different symbol on my name tag. Now, I subscribe to that philosophy, and I was proud to have met this metric, but like, look at that on the outside for a minute. Who else in the world was like, oh, I guess you do have another little thingy there. That's cool, right? Is that a good thing? You all seem really happy about it. Like, we have such a unusual reflection of who we are and what we are. And that takes this almost infinitesimal chance of stigma and blows it up completely out of the water.
I debriefed a FBI agent a few months ago, and a very horrific sex crimes case. And he made, I bet you he said 10 times, why is this bothering me? And I just kept repeating, you're human, man. If stuff like this, and just across the board, and this goes for anybody, if the stuff going on right now doesn't bother you, then you're a sociopath or have some, deep-seated, like, to feel is to be human, and to be human is to feel. And just humans across the board, we so often forget that we're human, and the stuff that we feel is normal. It's normal to be bothered by watching someone lose a life or lose a family member, or, it's normal to be totally freaked out with what's going on in the world right now.
And you guys are, though, leading the charge to break that stigma by starting your organizations. And we want to jump into the resource side of things right now, because there are so many things out there, including your two organizations, that we want to highlight and talk about what you're doing in terms of offering this peer support. So, James, will you tell us a little bit more about Stay Fit for Duty?
Sure. As Dan alluded to a handful of times, we're all part of both different and conjoining networks of mental health and peer support resources. My big goal is to encourage the normalization of mental health in any form of civil service, and to be able to connect people to the resources that they need, while simultaneously being one of the tremendous advocates of peer support and helping programs institute their own peer support. There is a tremendous amount of literature in the civil service and crisis response community that advocates for peers within an organization with a very small amount of training, and I mean that as a positive, not a negative, with training that doesn't take years to acquire, can do a phenomenal job of literally being the mental health paramedic, for lack of a better term, right? And not only encouraging and advocating for those programs, but helping other programs create those when they're in need.
And Dan, tell us more about your organization, Buddy Check Project.
So we do everything from crisis intervention to health and wellness coaching. When we're introduced to somebody, we basically just see what they need, almost like a mechanic shop. Just run a diagnosis, just see, immediately any life-threatening issues that need to be addressed. And then we just kind of create a care plan. A lot of times it's, just correcting, like getting them hooked up with a primary care physician, getting their vitamin, mineral, like the hormone levels checked, getting them hooked up with, professional counseling close to them. And we'll also, through our nonprofit, we're able to pay for up to 3 visits to the counselor. And I'll work with them on, not only am I a paramedic and in the military and all that, I'm a personal trainer, a nutrition coach, a health coach. And we just form a plan mentally and physically, spiritually and emotionally. There's kind of the 4 mountains that we talk about that you have to climb, because a lot of times, people get depressed and it's a vitamin D deficiency. or feeling depressed. It's a vitamin D deficiency or a hormone imbalance. Sometimes they just need to sleep. So we really just try to figure out almost like a diagnostic tool of what they need, and then get them set up with a peer support group, a professional counselor, EMDR therapy. We're about to pay for an EMT to go to Austin to do ketamine treatment at the ketamine clinic. So it's really just whatever they need, we provide it. And sometimes that's me mailing them a book, or sometimes it's us paying for a plane ticket for them to go to Austin, Texas. So, everybody is such a unique organism in their own like singularity. And it's really just kind of figuring out what they need and just being there as a presence.
That's amazing. We're going to be sharing links while we're chatting so that everyone can check out your sites. And I know Katie had pulled some other resources. Katie, you want to run through those?
Yeah. And I mean, what you guys are doing is awesome. It's so needed. And I do just want to confirm that you both offer services or support nationwide, correct? Or is it just in your areas?
I'm worldwide. I've debriefed people in Southeast Asia to Australia. I have a guy that follows us in South Africa and a couple other. I don't know how it reaches that far, but for a guy from Alabama,
Awesome. Well, I mean, that's a big thing too. I know there are a lot of local resources, and I say there's a lot, and you can Google them, but something that we want to be able to do today is put these resources in the hands of our viewers. So some other things that I found that are offering free or discounted support or services for first responders are groups such as Safe Call Now, Code One Wellness, Blue Help. James, you referred us also at one point to Uniformed Services Peer Council. I believe that's your friend Dennis that you guys have both mentioned, right?
He's awesome.
And then Talkspace also is offering some free support or discounted support, I believe, to first responders. So there's different, crisis lines in there. There's monetary support. There's therapeutic support. There's all of these things that are really rising to the top right now because of COVID and all of the work that you guys are putting in. So were there any other resources that you wanted to mention? And we'll link everything in the chat during the show.
And I know, and I'll speak for James too. And if people email us or contact us on Instagram, Facebook, wherever, we will hook them up with somebody in their near vicinity. That is one thing that Dennis, James, and myself do, is create that support system where they are. So if you're in, Anchorage, Alaska, we know people in Anchorage to say, hey, this person needs help, and we, with the power of Google and cell phones and social media, we can put a call out. We had to do it for a few weeks ago for a practitioner in North Dakota. And within 20 minutes, I had 15 texts on my phone saying, hey, I'm in, at the edge of North Dakota and Canada, so we'll, anything and everything that they need, we will get them. And I'll put that out just for anybody. I don't care if you're a banker or whoever, especially right now, just trying to be there for as many people as we can.
Absolutely. And that's a great tie-in on my point. There are a couple other programs that are doing just that. There's a program called Project Parachute or COVID Parachute that's offering complimentary teletherapy. And if you look at their Instagram and their Twitter, they're literally like, hey, who wants to donate 4 hours of time this week? Their focus is primarily on first responders and healthcare providers. But they've made it clear, at least from what I've read, that if you aren't in that network, they'll help you find somebody that is. So we certainly don't want to exclude anybody, but we want to make sure that our brothers and sisters in civil service know that they have a place with people that understand what they're going through, what it's like to go through it right now, and can help you get those specific resources as well.
That's so awesome. And I mean, Jen and I being with This Is My Brave, like we talk about mental health all the time. I was kind of like earlier when you guys were saying that, you know, you introduce yourselves as like paramedics and like these superheroes. And it's like, Jen and I introduce ourselves as This Is My Brave. And it's all of a sudden people want to hear your story. Like the reciprocation comes in right away. But I'm sure when you guys start talking about your organizations, there's probably more reciprocation that comes in than you know, even if people are just kind of noting it in the back of their minds that you offer peer support. So all of the resources that you guys have and you offer are amazing. We'll be sharing all of those in your webpage, your websites. But I think that kind of wraps everything up today that we wanted to talk about. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to mention that we didn't cover, or just any pieces of advice for your peers, anything like that?
I hope I'm not stealing Dan's line. No, take it. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
If I steal your line, I'm so sorry. Dan talks about it. I talk about it. Dennis talks about it. Everyone in our network talks about it. If you're listening to this and you're not okay, it's okay to not be okay. I mean, there's never a truer time for that statement than middle of a pandemic. It's okay to not be okay. You're not weak. You're not pathetic. You're not bad at your job. It's okay to not be okay. And reach out to us because we've been there and we can help you. But I really hope I didn't take Dan's last line.
No, you're good. No, I mean, you couldn't have said it better. Right now, honor everything that you're feeling, good, bad. You know, don't try to stuff it down. It's kind of like throwing up. You know, we try to fight the actual action of throwing up, but once you throw up, you feel better. And that's kind of like talking about mental health. Just let it out, you know. Everybody's here, I think, and that's one thing that COVID-19 has done is it gives everybody, you know, commonality. Like we're all in this. I mean, it's, you know, we're all stuck on this roller coaster of Groundhog's Day. And, you know, from the physical side, try to exercise safely, get out, get some sunlight. You know, as hard as it is being stuck inside, try to eat good, stay away from all the bad sweets and things that are, you know, going to cause the sugar and insulin influxes. And, you know, everybody has these and everybody has social media for the most part. And you would be surprised telling your story or taking the mask off, the mental health mask that we all wear, and say, hey, I'm just not okay. You know, I posted something kind of funny on social media the other day and said, hey, guys, I'm struggling too. And I had 19 people call me and text me, hey, I'm here if you need anything. And, you know, let's talk. Let's, you know, hey, FaceTime me, whatever. But just because we're, you know, isolated doesn't mean we're not connected. And the biggest thing is just reach out. It's okay. Hey, we're all in this together, you know.
You guys are amazing. And Dan, I've never heard anyone describe talking about mental health like throwing up, but I totally agree with you.
One of the most powerful things I ever did next to standing up in an AA meeting and saying, hey, I'm Daniel, and I am a absolute disaster right now, is talking about post-traumatic stress and dealing with depression and anxiety and, you know, telling people that I have suicidal thoughts every day. I mean, literally, at least once a day, that thought enters my head, and the connection that gives me to other people, you know, they're like, oh, really? You too? And the same with James. And we're like, yeah, we're human. Like it's okay. And kind of like throwing up, you know, everybody's done it and they've tried to fight it back. And after you do it, that weight is lifted off of you. You know, like Bryn Brown says, shame can't survive the light. And that's when you shine a light just on being normal and being human. I mean, it's one of the most powerful things you can do.
So true. So true. And I also loved your other reference to the mask of the smile we wear as a mask when we're hiding our struggles. And I have to give a plug for our fall shows because our promo video is all about how we are taking off the mask of the smile that we hide behind to bring our virtual shows out to the world. So I have to say we want to give a big thanks to James Boomhower and Dan Mills for joining us today to talk about mental health and suicide prevention among first responders. We want our first responders and everyone to know that you are not alone and recovery is possible. We need you here, and we want to help in any way we can. So something else we want to mention is that we do here at This Is My Brave have a partnership with BetterHelp.com, which they're offering us, our viewers, a free month of therapy. So you go to BetterHelp.com/thisismybrave, and you can be set up with a therapist in the next 24 to 48 hours. And this is available to any of our viewers, but first responders, we want you to know it's there. And we don't get any benefit out of it. We're just sharing it as a resource that they've provided. So thank you again to James and Dan for being here, and for our viewers tuning in today. Join us next week for Brave TV episode 12, Surviving Suicide Stories from Our Brave Alumni. Thanks, everybody.